Welcome back. We spent almost the entire last segment talking about Marcellus Shale and the impact that that's going to have during the next legislative session. And I'm sure we could spend the rest of the show talking about that. But I would like to move on to another topic and again, educate our viewers a little bit more about things that are going on in Harrisburg. And let's talk about one of your other committees, transportation. Aside from what we were talking about as it relates to the Marcellus Shale development and the use of a severance tax, what do you see as coming through this legislative session in the area of transportation? I know that tolling I-80 in the last session was a very big and hot item for the majority of the session. What do you see happening in this session?
Well, as a result of the decision not to toll 80, we're left with a very complicated funding dilemma for transportation, we being the state. And the fact of the matter is the transportation network is relied on by nearly every citizen every day of the week. And so we absolutely have to have roads and bridges that are efficient and, even more importantly, safe. And the cost to maintain PennDOT's network, which is among the largest networks in the state because of PennDOT's responsibility to maintain what would often be considered local roads, compounds the problem. So we have a significant funding problem in Pennsylvania. Cars are more efficient and require less gallons, and the gas tax that's been in place by both the federal government and the 50 state governments really hasn't kept pace with inflation. And there's a general reluctance, as you know, to impose other taxes and fees. And so as political and legislative leaders, we struggle with trying to find a fair way to balance the important needs of the transportation network with people's ability to pay for them. And
I'm sure, Mike, you're hearing from your constituents, we can't take any more taxes on our gas because the gas prices are going up and up and up, it seems, every week when you look at it. Mm-hmm. Something our audience may not know, and that is there's a difference between paying tolls on the Turnpike and the PennDOT budget. I mean, PennDOT is its own state agency, the Turnpike Commission is its own state agency. How do those two interact?
Well, right now, the Turnpike Commission, as a result of the bill that was passed to toll 80, even though the tolling of 80 provision was denied by the Federal Highway Administration, the other component of that bill still requires the Turnpike Commission to forward proceeds from the collection of fees on the Turnpike system to PennDOT for road and bridge projects throughout the state. And sadly, that number is less than it would have been if the tolling of 80 had occurred. So the Turnpike is a partner with PennDOT insofar as the Turnpike generates funds that are used by PennDOT for road and bridge projects. But even with that additional funding to PennDOT, it's not nearly enough to maintain the system that we have. And in northeastern Pennsylvania in particular, we have Interstates 80 and 81, not to mention 84 and 380. But 80 and 81 in particular really demand significant maintenance dollars, and really the capacity to handle the truck and vehicle traffic that's on 81 in particular now is reached. And so PennDOT is faced with a very significant problem related to how we can maintain the capacity to take care of the vehicle volume that we have on 81, especially between Scranton and Wilkes-Barre.
I want to move to another hot button issue that may or may not raise itself in this particular legislative session here in Pennsylvania, because it's something that's being talked about nationally, and that is the vouchers for schools. Do you see that as creeping into the state legislative sessions, or do you think that that's going to be left solely to the federal Congress?
Well, I think both legislatures, the state and the federal legislature, will deal with school funding and the question of vouchers and school choice. In Harrisburg, the state Senate has identified that as subject worthy of Senate Bill 1, which will be the school choice and school voucher bill that's being advanced by Senators Williams and Piccola. And that Senate bill, once in draft, will set in motion a debate that will likely dominate the next 6 months, parallel with the Marcellus Shale debate. And it is a very significant debate because, as you can imagine, public education is vitally important to the future of not only our region, but of this country. And it is imperative that we as policymakers get public education right. And we have to do that with a full understanding that students need the opportunity to be fully educated, and that parents can rely on the public education system to do that. And we have to make sure that the public education system has those tools.
So what would you propose? You, Mike Carroll, as the representative of the 118th District and a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, what would you propose?
Well, what I'd like to see is to make sure that we are giving the public schools the tools they need right now. I'm fearful that some of the public schools don't have the tools they need in order to be able to deal with troubled students. Because right now the public schools are required to provide an education to everyone who comes to their front door from their school district. And this problem is especially acute in Philadelphia, where there are real troubled students that show up and disrupt classrooms and make the learning environment far less than it should be. So my focus, while the discussion with choice and vouchers is occurring, is related to the tools that exist and what tools can we provide to public schools to make sure that they have the ability to deal with and manage problem students that disrupt the learning environment and make life complicated for students, teachers, and families.
And are you going to butt heads with your Republican colleagues because that may cause increased expenditure?
Well, no, this really isn't going to be a Republican-Democrat issue because there are some Democrats from the urban areas that are eager to head in the direction of choice and vouchers. And so it really is more a geographic question than it is a party question. But the concern that I have related to vouchers and choice is a financial concern, and that is that if we head too far down that path, we will result in increased property taxes for local taxpayers because there'll be less public dollars available for Pittston area, for Wilkes-Barre area, for the Scranton School District. And so we have to be very, very careful that we don't hamstring the school boards with less funding because they will have no choice but to raise school property taxes, which in my view is the most difficult tax for the public to accept. And in fact, I doubt that the residents of Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, or Pittston would be embracing a school property tax because we're advancing a voucher or choice bill.
Well, we've come to the end of our third segment here. Please join us for our final segment when we finish up with Representative Carroll here on You Be the Judge.